What's the greatest obstacle or challenge facing you on your path to becoming financially free? For most of us, it's the time it takes to even focus on it. We're so busy with our lives that we don't even know where to start. Come join Joey and I and the team in Nashville, Tennessee, August 9th through the 11th, as we break down the different ways that you can become financially free and introduce you to different strategies and speakers who can help you on that first step.
You have questions? This event is designed to give you the answers, to take action fast, to turn the decades it's taken us to learn this and turn them into days. Don't hesitate. Go to wealthwithoutwallstreet.com/live. And don't forget to use the promo code podcast to get a deep discount.
Wealth Without Wall Street Tribe. So excited to introduce you to Martin Papp. Martin, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, guys. Joey, Russ, great to be here.
Thank you for coming on. We're going to talk about how we invest potentially overseas. But the question I have is why? Why would I even want to consider investing overseas?
Well, to keep the answer short is better returns. Better returns than you're going to find in the United States in a lot of scenarios. So you can generate with my own investments and people that I speak with that are investing in countries like Thailand and Costa Rica, you can be generating returns up to 15 to 25% yield cash flow on cost per year. And then appreciation. I mean, some of these countries, properties appreciated 10x, in the last decade. So depends on where you are, obviously, but there's a lot of opportunities if you go beyond the United States sometimes.
Do you have your background? Has that set you up in some way that made you kind of consider investing overseas first?
Yeah, 100%. I think that's important. I grew up in Colorado, but I moved to mainland China and lived there for 10 years, learned Mandarin, got married in Sichuan province. And that's really where my business acumen kind of began. I started a business there with my wife, selling tea. So we're working with all sorts of farms around the world, importing teas into China, and as well as domestic teas. That led us into buying real estate. So we were buying in China and in Thailand, also in the United States. So I definitely got a good amount of experience seeing what it's like to do real estate investing in other markets. And I started to realize that there was some really good ROI to chase in some of these emerging economies if you invest at the right time.
So I understand that there's definitely good opportunities, but for someone who hasn't done overseas investing, the first things that come to mind are all the challenges. What are the things that keep people from investing overseas, in your opinion?
Well, it's reasonable to have a fear of the unknown. And a lot of people, when they're dealing with their own money, you want to make sure it's safe. So you're looking for things that aren't going to get you in trouble. So I get it. If you're going to go invest abroad, you need to do your homework. But I think the payoff is worth it. If you put in the time to kind of have the right methodology of investing in a foreign country safely, there is a roadmap to do that. And if you take the time and treat it like a business, the way, take the care that you should have, you can navigate that space and generate excellent returns. And I would push back on it sometimes because a lot of my experience, believe it or not, is that the United States market is one of the hardest markets. Not to say that there isn't a lot of opportunity in it, but it's highly regulated. It's very competitive. There's a lot of, especially in the short-term rental space where I really make my bread and butter, a lot of regulation coming down the pipeline that you don't know about. So there's a high level of uncertainty. So in some sense, I've found it much easier to actually invest in places like Costa Rica and Thailand, believe it or not. China would be an exception. China's that's going deep.
Yeah, I was going to say that definitely could be a challenge because the government wants to own almost everything there.
Yeah.
So you talked about the short-term rental space. That's interesting. Let's dive into that a little bit because Joey and I owned a short-term rental business for a number of years, and people have heard us talk about that. So what are you seeing overseas? You mentioned Thailand, Costa Rica. Why are those markets not as regulated around the same issues that are governing the short-term rental space here in the U.S.?
Yeah, I mean, this could be a whole podcast in itself. So I'll try to keep it short. But essentially, you have countries where they're at a stage in their development where they're really looking to grow the economy. They really want to grow the hospitality industry specifically in these countries. And so they really try to roll out the red carpet for foreign direct investment. They want you to go there and build that luxury retreat, that hotel, that villa, because that's creating jobs. It's bringing money into the country. They want that. And that's very different kind of scenario in the United States, where it's an advanced economy. People, have their HOAs and their municipal, and people are asking about, like, what does it mean to have the gentrification of the neighborhood here, and what does that mean? You're not having those conversations in countries that are really just focused on economic growth. Now, I'm trying to. I want to be careful not to sound like just a insensitive, foreigner, blundering my way into a foreign country. Obviously, there's ways to do it properly. Sustainable buildings, working in areas that you really try to preserve as much nature as you can, and you really can create appreciation and employ people in the local community to actually help the local economy. And so there's a really beautiful balance that you can strike and make really good money. And I think in the United States, it's so much riskier, because you don't know when there's going to be a vote next year of, let's crack down on these. We don't want these here. And you see that happening already. Like, I live near Palm Springs, and that's seeing huge price drops in housing because of the short-term rental regulations that came in last year.
Well, in fairness, though, the question I would have in result to that is like, what's the old saying? Is it the evil that you know versus the evil that you don't know, kind of thing, or whatever? Like, we know the evil or the government and the regulation in the U.S. Like, there is some level of understanding of what that is and what it's going to be like potentially. I guess it can change, but in a foreign country, it's like, how stable is the government? Like, is someone else going to come in power? And like, do they have a lot less regulation of what they can change? Like, we realize that there's certain formality in the U.S. that we've become accustomed to. That would be the question I'd have to you. Like, you mentioned Thailand and Costa Rica. I don't understand those government structures. How democratic are they? What are the structures? How has investment in the past worked? Can you give me some background of that?
Well, every country is different. So let's be really specific. When we say we're investing abroad, it's like you have to do your homework on and talk about the specific market. So I like Costa Rica because it's baby steps, in my opinion, for an investor in the United States to invest in a foreign country. They have very similar property right laws that follow the kind of what's been built in the United States. So freehold property rights, you have indefinite ownership of that land all the way indefinitely until just as much as any Costa Rican national would have. And it's a democratic nation, lots of successful successions. A really good way to look at the stability of a government is to see how many ex-presidents are still alive. I'm serious. And so there's a lot of indicators that you can look into to make sure that you're investing in a safe place. And Costa Rica, I think, really fits the bill if you're looking for some kind of advantage of the growth that you're going to see in Latin America over the next decade. There's huge opportunity coming down the pipeline with the decoupling of China and the United States. So you're seeing a lot of what we're calling like nearshoring. So they're trying to bring manufacturing, trying to bring goods and jobs back to local allies and domestically, geographically closer to the United States. Mexico, Central America, they're all going to be huge benefactors of that. And so you kind of create a macro picture of like, okay, I can see that the macro direction of this area is going really well. And then you start to go out and get an attorney that you would find in these countries, and you would start to have conversations with them, interview attorneys that work directly with foreign direct investors. Don't find the attorney that's a neighbor to your cousin who has, an aunt that, is a lawyer in the country. Like, actually go out and find the best lawyers you can. They can walk you through the steps of what it would mean to be an investor there. I would also highly recommend using online tools like AirDNA, for example, has a great resource for international real estate. I mean, people use it domestically in the US, but I can get really detailed data on the best performing Airbnbs and the VRBOs in countries all around the world. Everything from the Philippines to to Tanzania to Costa Rica, and I can go and find which ones are doing really well. I can then contact those hosts, and I can have long form interviews with the hosts of those hosts of those properties, asking them like, what are your pain points? Like, what was it like to create an Airbnb in this area? And sure, you might get some hosts that don't want to talk to you, but it's a numbers game. You reach out to 20 high performing Airbnbs on a beach somewhere where you want to go, and there's going to be one or two, I promise you, that are happy to share their story. They want to tell you, the challenges, and a lot of times it's for business development purposes too, because they maybe want to be a host for your property.
Good.
So I found great resources just by asking, finding people that are doing it well, and getting on the phone or getting on the Zoom call with them.
Let me ask you this, Martin. By the way, I love the idea of the short-term rentals as the way to maximize cash flow. Our podcast is all about passive income greater than monthly expenses, right? So this is one of those routes that a lot of people want to get interested in, is short-term rentals. But you did mention something about appreciation in these markets. And while that's not like our primary focus, talk about what you're seeing as far as trends that may have aided to them. Now, you said 10xing potentially in some markets in the last 10 years.
Yeah, I mean, the 10x's are kind of unicorns. That's kind of like where you got to hit it big. Like for example, if you had invested in Lombok, which is the island next to Bali, 10 years ago, I mean, those prices have just skyrocketed. So a good example of kind of finding hotspots that are like bustling and they're growing really fast, and then try to find what's going to be the next place next door. Where's the next city that this development's going to come to? If you had invested in Cabo San Lucas 15 years ago, I mean, that place is 10x. I don't quote me on that. I'd have to pull out the numbers, but those are the kind of places where you see massive property appreciation, and it's the kind of property appreciation that you don't see in the United States anymore in advanced economies. So if you take the leap to go in a foreign market chasing that high ROI, I look for those high appreciation opportunities. And I would say that Costa Rica is probably not going to 10x in the next decade, but it could definitely 3x, could triple by all accounts. And so you kind of want to find that middle ground where the more appreciation you want, the riskier the investment is probably going to be. I try to find a kind of a middle ground where there's still a lot of stability in the market. There's a very healthy short-term rental market, but there's still potential for growth. It's not Puerto Vallarta or Cancun yet,
And so what is your strategy? Are you guys going in and finding existing structures and immediately jumping on the market? Or are you guys going in and trying to build things and then grow from scratch?
I think both are winning opportunities. It depends on what you want to do. Obviously, if you go out and take the time to develop land yourself, that's where you're going to get the best return on investment. Because when you're buying, properties that are already built, the prices are built into that. The value adds already there for the most part. And obviously, you can improve that and make adjustments. I get that, but we like to start from acquiring land. We then work with the very best contractors, architects, and legal firm that we build. That's really all the work goes into that. Before we buy land, we actually already have the whole team set up. And I do want to take a slight moment to just explain that. Most people, when they go and invest abroad that aren't professionals at it, what they're doing is they're going and walking by a Remax window, in a beach town, and be like, oh, look at those properties for sale. Like, that looks amazing. Like, let's go. Like, and you get excited, and the agent brings you out there, and you're like, boom, I want this lot. Somebody's going to buy it tomorrow. I better get it today. And that's great if you want to just buy a home for yourself and you're not worried about the potential risks. But I would much prefer the method that we invest with, because the problem is if you do that, you'll find out that piece of land actually doesn't have utilities, or you actually find out that that's not zoned properly. It's an agricultural lot, so you can only build on 10% of it. You'll find out that that the international school down the street every morning at 3 p.m. is a huge bottleneck, and you will never get anywhere. It takes an hour to get from that property out into the town during the afternoon hours. Like, those are the things you don't know when you rush into buying a property. And so what we do is we build the team first. First, we find the legal. Then the legal will tell us, who are the best property agents that they work with, because they've done hundreds of transactions with them. We'll also then use, as I said, tools to find really high performing Airbnbs or villas that are doing really well. We find out who the architects are, who are the contractors. We contact them. We put together that team. We then ask them, because we're not the experts, we ask them, if you were investing, where would you go? What properties would you be buying? And so it's really about turning all the questions over to people that know the area better than you ever would. And they're the ones that will say, like, oh, well, you should check out this property. This mountainside is going to blow up over the next few years. Okay. So then that's one bird in your ear. You go and do your own research. You talk to more people. And if you start to get enough confirmation from people, okay, we've now selected an area, and then the right property agents to work with. And so at the very last piece is when we go out and buy the property. And I think that's the right process to go through any process of developing land. And especially abroad, you have to do all of the work in advance. And that's how I avoid all the problems of zoning or potential conflicts with the municipality. And I would always say property is the last step.
Tribe, listen up. We're entering into the election year. This is the time where people are going to get super fearful. We're going to see businesses start to dry up. We're going to see opportunities, though, pile up for us only if we're prepared.
That's right. You get to choose right now. Will you allow this time frame to negatively affect you in your business and your investments? Or will you be prepared to take advantage of these huge opportunities that come on the backside of this because you're prepared with cash?
Let's get our house in order. If you haven't already maximized the infinite banking concept in your life, here's the chance for you to start learning. Go to wealthwithoutwallstreet.com/IBC. Take our free webinar so that you can start getting equipped with the things that you need to know so that you can take action on this looming event.
I like that approach. You're definitely kind of taking it as much of the risk out of the process as you can. Talk about, for the person that's never done this overseas, the challenges, or if there are any, of finding good quality management companies, or do you guys look to manage it yourself? Talk about that process.
We outsource. I think I'm in the business of wanting to build beautiful locations and make money from it. I don't want to be worrying about the cleaning crew coming in every week. So that goes in hand with why I like to find markets that are already relatively developed, because then locally you will find good property management firms. And I think, again, that's where I've said it 3 times now, but that's where AirDNA can help a lot, is because you get enterprise level AirDNA. You get to have the profiles of all the best property managers of the highest performing properties there. Contact them. They want your business. Have them bid for it. Have them go out and have them wine and dine you to try to find the best property manager. People are eager to work and provide excellent hospitality service. There's no shortage of good property management firms. You just got to have the process in order to take your time to pick the right one.
Did you just say I could start visiting luxury areas and tropical destinations, and they will pay for it? Like, they're going to wine and dine? Is that what you're saying? Like, is this the way I'm going to be able to get the next free trip or the next discounted trip?
He's so cheap, Martin.
They won't pay for it, but but I'll give you a brief example. I have a property in that I'm trying to get under contract. It's not purchased yet, in Santa Teresa. That's a beautiful beach town off the west coast of Costa Rica and the Nicoya Peninsula. Surfer's paradise. I contacted an Airbnb host that had a really good performing property there, and I told him my plan. I said, "Hey, I love what you're doing. I would love to build something similar." And he said, "Hey, I've been doing this for many years. Let me tell you all of the pain points." He wrote down all of the costs it takes to run that property. He literally wrote it down in my Airbnb message chat. And I was like, wow, this guy's awesome. Super transparent, super helpful. I go down to Santa Teresa. He puts me up in his villa. I do pay for it, but then he takes me out to dinner. He shows me all the places to be, and then he also shows me off market properties. I mean, you're getting the local expertise given to you, and it's enjoyable. You're having a good time. They're having a good time. So the answer is yes, Russ. You can go down and you can find amazing people that are happy to share their experiences with you. You have to just be willing enough to put in the effort to find these people.
Okay, so I'm not the cheap one of the group here. Actually, most people would know me to be the cheaper one of the group. That was a lie. But I have a question that has been plaguing my brain as we've been talking about foreign investment. We've been talking about the need to travel. Like this model is based on travel, and it has to do with the arbitrage of foreign, Westerners coming to these locations, because there's not a lot of locals coming to these locations that you're building these luxury, places.
Not at these prices, right?
Right. In order to make the investment, return. So talk to me about the challenges. What are you doing in light of, hey, I just built this luxury place. It hits the market in March 2020 happens. What is the business model around that? And how do you help somebody who's thinking about foreign investment consider those risks? Like, how do you manage that?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I actually think this is one of the reasons that I feel like investing in the United States is so difficult, is because the margins are so fine. Almost everything is using leverage. And you really have to be really on point to make a profit and come out in the green. And if something goes wrong, it can really derail it. And that's why I like, and I'm glad you brought it up, is that most of these investments you're going to make abroad are going to be all cash, no debt. Not to say it doesn't exist, but in most of these countries don't have the financial system set up to allow you to that easily to go get a 25, 30-year mortgage on a property that you're a foreign national to and you're not a resident. So you're kind of already reducing a lot of that risk if something goes wrong, because that's an asset that you own outright. And if something goes wrong, you're not going to be worried about the bank repossessing it because you weren't able to generate the income that you thought you were going to generate from it. Property tax, for example, also really low in a lot of these countries. In Costa Rica, it's 0.25%. So, I mean, I just find it less risky in that sense. You also...
So are you seeing in that, like, well, nobody can control whether or not we have another lockdown, another, worldwide, deal here. You're saying that the returns are going to help you offset the potential downfalls that could happen there. And
Correct.
The risk of having low leverage is going to be another offsetting factor.
Correct. So you said it very well. Because you're getting higher margins, 15 to 25% ROI on some of these properties. If something goes wrong, if there's a delay, or if there's a season that wasn't going well, it's okay. Like, there's enough room for error that you're going to be all right. And then because of the low leverage, that's more of like a COVID scenario where if you can't rent this place out at all, or you get stuck in some really tough position, you're not worried about the real negative effects of having debt, burdening you. And I think that's something that's very appealing for me when I go and invest abroad, is that I feel a lot less risky than the property where I'm leveraged up really high in the United States, and everything has to work just right for it to make sense.
So talk about everything's going well and you've made the cash flow you want. You see the appreciation in these markets. Like let's go 5 to 10 years from now. What does the exit look like? What are the options? What are the concerns or potential challenges on the exit side?
I think a lot of this stuff isn't that different from the United States. I mean, you sell if you were looking for a clear exit, but there's also, the buy and hold strategy holds true abroad as well. Like, I mean, why sell your assets when you have properties that continue to appreciate and continue to produce cash? So that's really a personal choice. I don't think it's any different than asking that question in the United States.
What are the tax implications of investing overseas and earning, obviously, hopefully large profits on an annual basis? And then as well as if we were to exit and have a liquidity event. Talk a little bit about that. I don't think I quite understand that.
Yeah, I mean, depends how you set it up with your taxes and your accountant, but you can have them be pass-through entities. So like, we have an LLC that owns the land, and that LLC is a pass-through to our U.S. entity, and so I still get tax depreciation benefits. It's not a bonus depreciation; it's a linear depreciation. So you can still get a lot of the advantages of owning assets. I can depreciate anywhere between 3 to 6% per year. It's a different system. It's called the ADS system. I think they call it like alternative depreciation system, I think is the right word for it. Cannot do 1031 exchanges. That's off the table. But yeah, you would treat it like any asset that you would own. There'd just be some special restrictions on it.
So you have an entity set up in that foreign country, and then an entity set up in the U.S.
Mhm.
And the entity in the foreign country passes through directly to the U.S. Am I paying tax to that? Just using Costa Rica as an example, that entity is in Costa Rica. Am I paying Costa Rican tax as well?
Yes, you will, but then that would be reported when you with your U.S. accountant as well, and that they would offset that.
Okay, so I'm not double tax. I'm not paying that and paying the federal tax here in the U.S.
Correct.
Okay, cool. And then is there like does the foreign markets, do they have the same as us, like a long-term capital gain on properties held over a year or whatever?
That would be on a case-by-case basis, depending on the country and the tax system that you're in. I'd have to get back to you on that specifically. Yeah.
No worries. Well, this is just interesting. Like, I mean, we haven't really talked about investing in real estate in foreign countries. I think there's some interesting points that you brought up. Outside of just the financial stuff, talk a little bit really quickly as we start to wrap up. Like, how have you been able to benefit? Like, what does this look like for you going through this whole process over the last, 10 to 15 years that you've been doing it?
Oh man, I love it. I love, there's a lot of things we could do to make money. If you have a good shoulder on your heads, on your head, not your heads. If you have a good shoulder on your head, and you have common sense, and you take your work and you're investing seriously, you can make money in real estate in a lot of ways. And I'm sure you guys know that. I'm sure you guys are killing it, doing your own investments. So for me, the question is, what can I do to make money? It's what can I do to make money and enjoy the journey. And that's where I was leading with the idea that for me, this is about lifestyle. I could go invest in multifamily apartments in Texas. I've seen plenty of those deals. Yes, they will generate you ROI, but are you going to have, the enriching experiences of talking to a local Uber driver, going through, the streets of Costa Rica, asking them all these questions and working on your Spanish. And I mean, I love that stuff. And it keeps my mind flexible. It keeps me young mentally. I'm trying to do this I don't want to diss other people's, values of how they want to live. But me personally, living in Orange County, Irvine, if I had to stay here every day for the rest of my life, which many people will do, it would be the most depressing thought in the world for me. I want to have more chapters in my life. I want to be always absorbing and learning new stuff. And by creating a work in your investment portfolio, by diversifying a little bit, by trying some new stuff, you can always incorporate new and novel experiences and opportunities that way. And so I try to get away from the mundane. I try to do stuff that's interesting, fulfilling, and dealing with tangible, beautiful assets and making money at the same time in other parts of the world. For me, there's nothing better that I can imagine doing.
So cool. That's so cool. And I agree. You have to have the investment that lines up with you. We always talk about it as your investor DNA profile. And by the way, if you haven't already done that, you can engage with us at wealth.wallstreet.com/free call. Get on a call and learn what your investor DNA is through our coaching program, the Ignite coaching program. Man, Martin, I can't thank you enough for being on today, sharing this new kind of entire world of opportunities. If people want to connect with you, what's the best way for them to connect?
I think if you're interested in joining our syndication, our community, where we bring on investors and we invest in these properties together, you can go to our website, thenovahouse.com. If you have personal questions, you just want to connect with me in chat, you can find me on LinkedIn, Martin Papp. I would say those are probably the best places to go.
Awesome. Well, thanks again for being on. And Tribe, if you found value today, please let us know. Take a screenshot of this and tag Russ and I, and just let us know that this is the kind of stuff you want to learn more about. If you can also just rate and review the podcast, it helps us to beat the big tech algorithm and get this in the ears of more people. So thanks as always, and we'll catch you on the next episode.
This has been the Wealth Without Wall Street podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to the show to break free of the Wall Street mindset and begin building wealth on your own terms in places you understand so that your wealth will never run dry. See you next episode.